Hello there. Today I'd like to talk to you about a wine I've just bought that I think is a bit of a bargain. I'm currently in the UK and I went into a supermarket here, a branch of Waitrose, to find that a wine that I really quite like, Chateau Deyrem Valentin, this is the 2022 vintage of that, had been marked down from a price of £34 to £17. So I grabbed a few bottles and I thought I'd taste one of them with you. So Deyrem Valentin is a wine that's classed as a crubourgeoissuperior, having gained that classification 2020. While it's within the appellation of Margaux, it's actually based in the commune of Soussans, which is to the north of the Margaux appellation, close to the commune boundary, where neighbouring vineyards are simply classified as Haut-Médoc. The estate has been in the hands of the Sorge family for 4 generations now. Evidently the estate was first founded in 1730, but it was in 1928 that Maurice Blanc, the current owner, Jean Sorge's grandfather, purchased, and the family have subsequently purchased vineyards that they've added to the estate. As I say, currently ownership lies with Jean Sorge, but since 1999 his daughters Christelle and Sylvie have joined him in running the business, both in wine production and in terms of administration and marketing the wines. The estate has 20 hectares of vineyards, and these lie predominantly in the Margaux appellation, but they also have vines in the Haut-Médoc. As a result of this, they actually make 3 separate wines, each of which has its own dedicated plot of wines. So the majority of their vineyard, 13 hectares, goes to make Chateau Deyrem Valentin, this wine. They have a further 3 hectares within Margaux, from which they make a wine called Chateau Soussans. And then there are another 3 hectares of vines just across the boundary in the Haut-Médoc, from which the fruit goes into a wine that is labelled as Chateau Valentin. Now the 2 Margaux estates are planted roughly 50-50 with Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, and they do have a minuscule percentage of Petit Verdot planted as well. Chateau Valentin, however, the Haut-Médoc property, planted to 40% Cabernet Sauvignon with about 30% of Petit Verdot and then 20% of Merlot, so that is a little unusual. The vineyards here lie predominantly on the deep gravel plateau of Marsac, where the gravels are a Gunsian gravel, a quartz containing gravel that's very good at reflecting heat back to the vines. The estate has the HVE certification, so high environmental value, as a certification of sustainable vineyard practices. And the vines here have a creditable average age of 30 years, so these should be nicely mature vines providing concentrated fruit. 2022 was predominantly a warm, dry vintage. Cool, dry winter was followed by a good spring where quite an abundant crop was set. This was followed by a dry summer with heat waves, resulting in an early harvest of ripe, healthy fruit with some really good intensity. Picking at Deyrem Valentin started on the 16th of September and was completed by the end of the month. Everything was hand-picked, plot by plot, and in the winery both varieties and plots were fermented separately. Fermentation takes place between 25 and 26 degrees C to try and ensure that there's a gentle extraction going on. It much warmer will pull harsher tannins out of the skins and the pips of the fruit. Both fermentation and a malolactic conversion went on in tank. Following fermentation, the wine was then pressed and aged in oak barrels. I would assume 225 litre barriques, of which 50% were new and 50% had been used to hold 1 vintage previously. I believe the blend here in 2022 was 56% of Cabernet Sauvignon, 42% of Merlot and 2% of Petit Verdot. I believe they made just over 6,000 cases in 2022. Now they have been working very hard on the wine's quality here in the last few years, and since 2017 Hubert de Bouard of Chateau Angelus has been the wine consultant here, and I can remember this being a very appealing wine when I tried it at the Entrepreneurs. So let's have a look at it now and see how it's tasting now that it's had a little bit of time in bottle. I have to say the colour has an impressive depth. It's a deep, almost sort of black purple colour. It loses very little colour to the rim. The wine is labelled as having 14.5% alcohol, and it's certainly powerful. It's forming some very obvious tears fairly readily there. I really think that's pretty much opaque. I can't see through that at all. So let's see what we make of the aromas, shall we? There is a lovely lifted high note to these aromas. It really is a classic, delicate Margaux aroma of violets. Such is their pungency and precision, I might almost say Parma violet. And yet behind that, there really is a richness and a concentration. It starts with sort of plummy, dark red fruit. There's something sort of opulent and very ripe about it. And that's being followed up by some actually very well integrated cedary and vanilla notes coming from the oak that this is aged in. I should have said oak aging in barrel, I believe, out to about 16 months, so over a year. So lovely intensity on the aroma, so nice deep colour, vibrant colour, lovely intensity of fresh aromas, which have both lifted perfume and also some ripe, rich fruit power coming through there. So let's have a taste. The palate is structured and firm. There's a very fine, really quite beautiful tannic structure there. Overlaying the red fruit, there are sort of chocolatey notes coming from the oak alongside cedar, vanilla. It's good acidity. I'm getting some lovely mouth-watering notes there. And then bursting through from behind that, there's rich, plummy fruit, almost with a sort of a glycerol ripeness coming through there. It starts as dark red and it moves through into more sort of black fruit. And then you've got notes of black cherry, perhaps some cassis coming through at the back there, and a real depth and a concentration. I'm almost thinking of sort of elderberries, really concentrated, powerful, dark fruit. So it's just touching on becoming slightly licoricey, but there's a richness and a roundness that almost amounts to sweetness, sweet licorice sort of note coming through there. I mean, the wine is dry, obviously, but there's such a lovely glycerol richness going on there. The tannins are helping to give some nice length to the finish. Seeing that the alcohol was at 14.5% on a Margaux, a wine that I want to be delicate and elegant, did slightly worry me at first. There is a little bit of heat to the back palate, but actually that's helping to emphasise the slight cinnamon and nutmeg spices that are coming from the oak, and in general it's being balanced by the rich, ripe glycerol nature of the fruit. I hope that you're picking up that I'm really quite impressed by this wine. I have been watching Deyrem Valentin for a few years now because their wines seem to be offering some fabulous quality at really quite a reasonable price. And certainly if you can get it for the equivalent of £17 a bottle, that's fantastic. I do have to say I think that's probably just because there were some slight markings on the label that it had been reduced. So I think I got really lucky there because it certainly hasn't affected the flavour. Looking at the Wine Searcher aggregated critics score for this wine, it's rated at 91 out of 100. That's a good score, but I actually think that if I was scoring this, I'd be scoring this a 92. I'd be at the slightly higher end of the range of scores that make up that aggregation. This is a wine whose drinking window I've seen noted as 2025 through to 2050. At the bottom of that scale, yes, the wine has some tannic grip, but it's not at all harsh. These are lovely, smooth, velvety tannins, so I certainly think it's a wine that's enjoyable to drink now. I certainly also think that the good acidity and the fine tannins and the concentration of fruit give it the ability to age. I don't know whether I would necessarily say it would last another 25 years, but fortunately at that price I bought a few bottles, so I might leave one or two of them aside and see how they progress. So yes, a really attractive and affordable wine from Deyrem Valentin, and with its beautiful perfume really showing some of the character that I expect from Margaux. So a wine that's been really lovely to try. So thank you so much for joining me. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, it would be great if you'd press the like button. If you'd like to watch more of these tastings, please consider signing up and subscribing to my YouTube channel. And if you do that, also do make sure you set yourself an alert, and that way you can be notified every time I publish a new tasting. If you have any comments, please do pop those in the comments box below. I'd love to know your feedback on the wines I'm looking at, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to that. And if you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please pass it on to them. I'd be very grateful to you for that support. So thank you again for watching me, and I do hope that maybe you'll manage to make some time and come and join me for another tasting in the very near future. Until then, bye for now.